There is something you need to hear today, and it may disturb the version of the story you have been carrying in your mind. You have spent too long believing the explanation people gave you for what happened to you. You accepted their accusations. You replayed their rejection. You questioned your own heart because somebody else decided to misunderstand it. You blamed yourself for doors that closed, relationships that collapsed, opportunities that disappeared, and seasons that seemed to bury your hopes alive. But what if you have been looking at the wrong side of the story? What if the silence was not abandonment? What if the delay was not denial? What if the people who walked away were not proof that you were worthless, but evidence that God was separating your life from what could never carry you into the future He has listened carefully? Because this is not the moment to turn away. It is time to let you know the truth. The truth is that God saw what you could not see. While you were crying over what you lost, God was watching what would have happened if you had kept it. While you were begging certain people to stay, God already knew what their continued presence would cost you. While you were trying to repair relationships that kept breaking your spirit, God knew every conversation that happened behind your back. God knew every hidden motive, every private accusation, every dishonest explanation, every moment when somebody smiled at you while carrying something completely different in their heart. You thought you were being forgotten, but you were being observed. You thought nobody knew what you endured, but God knew every detail. There were nights when you could not explain why your heart felt so heavy. You went to sleep exhausted and woke up carrying the same invisible weight. You smiled around people because you did not want them to know how close you were to breaking. You answered, "I'm fine," because explaining the truth felt too painful. You learned how to function while wounded. You learned how to continue while disappointed. You learned how to show up while something inside you was screaming. How much longer? But God was not confused by your silence. God understood the prayer behind the tears you could not turn into words. And now you need to understand something that may completely change the way you remember your past. Not everything you lost was a loss. Some things were removals. Some endings were protections. Some disappointments were redirections. Some betrayals exposed what your loyalty had refused to see. Some closed doors were mercy wearing an unfamiliar face. You wanted God to explain everything immediately, but God did not owe you an explanation before He transformed the situation. Sometimes understanding arrives after the separation, after the healing, after the distance, after you finally stand far enough away to see what you were too emotionally attached to recognize. You kept asking, why did they do this to me? But perhaps there is another question you need to ask. Why did God allow me to survive it? Because you survived something you once thought would destroy you. You walked through humiliation and still found a reason to wake up. You were rejected and still kept moving. You were falsely accused and still refused to become the person they accused you of being. You were abandoned and still had enough strength to search for meaning. You were disappointed by people, but you did not completely lose your ability to believe that your life still mattered. That strength did not come from the people who hurt you. It came from God sustaining you when your own strength was almost gone. Do not underestimate what it means that you are still standing. You may look at yourself and see scars, but God sees endurance. You may see years that seem wasted, but God sees lessons that cannot be purchased through comfort. You may see mistakes but God sees what you learned from them. You may see doors that never opened, but God sees destinations you were protected from entering. You may see yourself as delayed, but God is not measuring your life by the calendar you created. You have been comparing your life to people who were never assigned your journey. You watched someone else receive what you prayed for and wondered whether God had forgotten your name. You saw someone else succeed while you were struggling. You watched relationships form while yours collapsed. You saw money increase for others while you were trying to survive. You saw people who hurt you appear to prosper while you were still dealing with the consequences of what they did. And quietly, perhaps you asked a question you were afraid to say aloud. God, why them and not me? But their timing is not your evidence. Their appearance is not your reality. Their public success does not reveal the condition of their private life. You cannot judge God's work in your life by what somebody else is displaying in theirs. A photograph cannot tell you the whole story. A smile cannot tell you the whole story. A promotion cannot tell you the whole story. A relationship cannot tell you the whole story. You are looking at fragments and comparing them to the full weight of your own experience. God is not asking you to compete with anybody. God is asking you to become honest about what you have learned. You cannot enter a new season while worshiping the explanation of your old one. You cannot spend the rest of your life trying to convince people who have already decided to misunderstand you. You cannot keep knocking on doors simply because you are afraid to admit that God may have closed them. There is a point when persistence becomes attachment. There is a point when loyalty becomes self-abandonment. There is a point when forgiveness must coexist with distance. There is a point when you must stop asking someone who wounded you to confirm that you deserve to be treated well. Your worth does not become real when another person finally recognizes it. Your value does not increase because somebody apologizes. Your dignity does not depend on whether the people who hurt you eventually understand what they did. God knows who you are when nobody is applauding. God knows the intentions you carried when people accused you of having motives you never possessed. God knows the sacrifices you made without telling anybody. God knows the times you helped people who later turned against you. God knows the conversations where you defended someone who eventually betrayed you. God knows how many times you gave another person grace while receiving none in return. And perhaps this is why the truth is uncomfortable. You were expecting God to make them understand you. God may instead be teaching you that you do not need their understanding to continue your assignment. You were expecting God to make them apologize. God may instead be teaching you how to heal without waiting for an apology. You were expecting God to restore the relationship. God may instead be restoring your relationship with your own peace. Do you understand how powerful that is? Imagine no longer waking up wondering what they think about you. Imagine no longer checking whether they have changed. Imagine no longer rehearsing arguments in your mind that you will probably never have. Imagine no longer trying to construct the perfect explanation that will finally make them admit they were wrong. Imagine releasing the courtroom that has been operating inside your mind for years. You do not need to win every argument to win your life. Some people will never tell the truth about what happened because telling the truth would require them to confront themselves. Let them carry what belongs to them. You carry what belongs to you. Your responsibility is not to control another person's conscience. Your responsibility is to keep your heart from becoming poisoned by what they did. This does not mean pretending that betrayal did not hurt. It hurt, it mattered, it changed you. There are wounds that leave you more cautious, more observant, more careful about whom you trust. Do not shame yourself for that. Healing does not require you to become naive again. Wisdom is not bitterness. Boundaries are not hatred. Distance is not revenge. Silence is not weakness. You can forgive someone and still refuse to give them access to the same place in your life. You can release anger without reopening the door. You can wish somebody well without walking beside them. You can stop carrying hatred without pretending that what happened was acceptable. God does not need you to become cruel in order to become strong. You may have spent years believing strength meant never crying, never needing help, never admitting fear, never acknowledging disappointment. But there is another kind of strength. It is the strength to tell God, I am hurt, but I will not let this define me. It is the strength to say, I do not understand, but I will not abandon my faith because I do not have every answer. It is the strength to wake up after disappointment and decide that your future will not be punished for what your past endured. Listen to me carefully. Your wound is not your identity. What happened to you is part of your story, but it is not the author of your story. You are not the betrayal. You are the person who survived it. You are not the accusation. You are the person who continued despite it. You are not the rejection. You are the person who discovered that rejection could not erase your purpose. You are not the abandoned version of yourself. You are becoming someone who understands that human presence is not the same thing as divine presence. There were moments when you thought you were alone because the room was empty. But God was not absent because people were absent. There were moments when nobody answered your call. God heard the prayer you could barely whisper. There were moments when nobody defended you. God knew the truth. There were moments when nobody celebrated your progress. God saw every small step. There were moments when you felt invisible. God did not lose sight of you. That is the truth. And now there is another truth you must accept. You cannot keep living as though the worst thing that happened to you is still happening. Your body may have left the old environment, but your mind may still be living there. You may no longer speak to the people who hurt you, yet you still allow their voices to narrate your decisions. They told you that you were not enough, and now every opportunity makes you wonder whether you will fail. They told you that you were difficult, and now you apologize for having needs. They ignored you, and now you overperform to prove your value. They abandoned you, and now you cling to people who give you crumbs because loneliness frightens you more than mistreatment. That is not freedom. God did not carry you through the fire so you could spend the rest of your life standing at its entrance. At some point, you must stop building your identity around what other people did to you. You must ask yourself, who am I when I am no longer trying to prove them wrong? That question will expose something deep. Because sometimes the person who hurt you leaves, but the need to prove yourself remains. You work harder, achieve more, accumulate more, become more impressive, become more successful, hoping that one day the people who rejected you will look at you and regret their decision. But what happens if they never look? What happens if they never regret it? What happens if they never come back? Will you still become who God called you to become? That is the test. If your entire future depends on someone from your past witnessing your transformation, then they still have control over you. You need to become free enough to succeed without needing them to know. Let God be the witness. Let God see you build again. Let God see you recover. Let God see you become disciplined. Let God see you become peaceful. Let God see you stop chasing what keeps running away. Let God see you choose wisdom over impulse. Let God see you become the person your pain could not destroy. Because the deepest victory is not making your enemies jealous. The deepest victory is reaching a place where their opinion no longer determines your emotional temperature. You do not need revenge when you have peace. You do not need to announce your healing when your life demonstrates it. You do not need to tell everybody that God is restoring you. Live restored. There will be people who remember your weakest season and continue treating you according to an old version of you. Let them. They are not required to update their opinion before you update your life. Some people will only understand your growth when they see its results. Others will never understand it. Neither group determines your future. God does. And perhaps God has been preparing you in ways you did not recognize because preparation often looks nothing like promotion. You thought preparation would feel exciting. Sometimes preparation feels like isolation. You thought preparation would look like abundance. Sometimes preparation looks like learning how to live with less. You thought preparation would bring more people into your life. Sometimes it removes people. You thought preparation would make everything easier. Sometimes it exposes weaknesses you were able to hide when life was comfortable. Why? Because God may be developing capacity before increasing responsibility. If you received everything you wanted before becoming strong enough to carry it, the blessing itself could become a burden. You asked for a larger life. God may first be enlarging your character. You asked for influence. God may first be teaching you discipline. You asked for financial increase. God may first be teaching you stewardship. You asked for a healthy relationship. God may first be teaching you boundaries. You asked for peace. God may first be showing you what you must stop entertaining. You asked for a new chapter. God may first be closing the old one completely. And you became frustrated because you wanted movement while God was working underneath the surface. But roots grow in darkness. That does not mean nothing is happening. Some of the most important work in your life may be happening where nobody can see it. Nobody applauds a person for becoming emotionally mature. Nobody throws a celebration when you finally stop reacting to every insult. Nobody gives you a trophy for refusing to return to an environment that damaged you. Nobody sees the private discipline required to rebuild your confidence. But God sees. And what God sees matters more than what people applaud. There is a version of you that was created by survival. That version learned to expect disappointment. That version scanned every room for danger. That version assumed people would eventually leave. That version struggled to trust good news because bad news had become familiar. But you are not required to remain that version of yourself. You can learn to breathe again. You can learn to trust wisely. You can learn to receive without suspicion. You can learn to rest without guilt. You can learn to experience happiness without waiting for something terrible to happen. You can learn that peace does not have to be followed by punishment. God can teach your heart a new rhythm, but you have to stop romanticizing the old pain. Sometimes we say we want healing while continuously reopening the wound through memories, messages, social media, old conversations, imaginary arguments, and endless speculation about what could have happened. You cannot change what happened yesterday by mentally revisiting it 1,000 times. The past is not asking for another trial. It is asking to be released. You have already paid enough emotional rent for some people who no longer live in your life. Stop giving them free space in your mind. There are dreams waiting for your attention. There are decisions waiting for clarity. There are relationships you have not met yet. There are opportunities you cannot recognize because you are still staring at the door that closed. Sometimes God cannot show you the beauty of what is ahead because you refuse to turn your face away from what is behind. You keep saying, but I wanted that. God knows. You keep saying, but I love them. God knows. You keep saying, but I thought this was my future. God knows. And sometimes the hardest sentence to pray is, God, if this is not for me, help me release it without destroying myself, trying to keep it. That prayer requires surrender, not passive surrender, powerful surrender. The kind of surrender that says, I will not force what you are removing, because forcing something to remain does not make it God's will. You can force a relationship. You can force a partnership. You can force an opportunity. You can force communication. You can force access. But you cannot manufacture peace by force. And if you have to constantly fight to keep something that continuously destroys your peace, perhaps the question is not, how do I keep this? Perhaps the question is, why am I afraid to let it go? Fear will make you hold what God is trying to remove. Fear says, what if nothing better comes? Faith says, if God closes this, I do not need to become desperate. Fear says, what if I end up alone? Faith says, I would rather be alone for a season than surrounded by people who slowly destroy my spirit. Fear says, what if I fail again? Faith says, failure will teach me, but abandoning myself will destroy me. Fear says, what if people reject me? Faith says, their rejection cannot cancel what God has written into my life. This is the shift you need. Not pretending that fear does not exist, but refusing to let fear make your decisions. You have allowed fear to call itself wisdom. You called it being realistic when it was actually expecting disappointment. You called it being careful when it was actually avoiding every opportunity. You called it protecting your heart when it was actually building a prison around it. There is a difference between discernment and fear. Discernment observes, fear assumes, discernment waits for evidence, fear invents disasters. Discernment creates boundaries. Fear creates walls. Ask God to teach you the difference, because you do not want to become so afraid of being hurt again that you become incapable of receiving what is good. The betrayal was real, but it does not mean everyone is your betrayer. The rejection was real, but it does not mean every door will close. The failure was real, but it does not mean your future is doomed. The abandonment was real, but it does not mean you are destined to be abandoned. Do not turn one chapter into a prophecy about the entire book. God has not finished writing your story, simply because one season ended badly. And this is where I want you to become very honest. Some of you are waiting for God to change your circumstances when God is first trying to change your interpretation of them. You keep saying, my life is over. God says, this chapter is over. You say, nobody wants me. The truth may be that the wrong people did not value you. You say, I missed my opportunity. Perhaps that opportunity was never the final opportunity. You say, I wasted years. Perhaps those years taught you what comfort never could. You say, I am behind. Behind whom? behind people whose lives you cannot fully see, behind a timeline you invented, behind expectations that were never given to you by God. You are exhausting yourself trying to arrive at a destination that may not even belong to you. Let God define the pace. There is urgency in obedience, but there is no wisdom in panic. You do not have to destroy yourself trying to make up for time you believe you lost. You are not God. You do not have to control every outcome. You do not have to predict every turn. You do not have to understand every delay. You have to walk faithfully with the light you have today. Tomorrow will reveal what tomorrow requires. And perhaps this is why God has been quiet about certain things. You wanted the entire map. God gave you the next step. You wanted guarantees. God gave you enough strength to move. You wanted certainty. God gave you discernment. You wanted an explanation. God gave you endurance. And you thought those gifts were smaller than what you requested. They were not. Endurance may save you when opportunity arrives. Discernment may protect you from the wrong opportunity. Wisdom may prevent you from repeating the same mistake with a different person. Patience may keep you from grabbing something simply because you are tired of waiting. You were asking for the destination while God was preparing you for the journey. Now hear this. Stop interpreting every delay as rejection. A delayed answer is not automatically a denied answer. But also, stop assuming every desire is a promise simply because you want it deeply. God-centered faith is not demanding that reality obey your imagination. It is trusting God enough to accept both open doors and closed doors. That is mature faith. It says, God, I will be grateful if you give it, and I will still trust you if you remove it. That kind of trust cannot be manipulated by circumstances. That kind of trust survives disappointment. That kind of trust does not collapse every time life refuses to cooperate with your plans. You have been through too much to remain spiritually fragile. The pain must produce wisdom. The betrayal must produce discernment. The isolation must produce self-knowledge. The waiting must produce patience. The disappointment must produce depth. Otherwise, you will keep surviving the same lesson in different forms. Maybe that is one of the truths you needed to hear. Not every painful season is caused by other people. Sometimes you must look inward without condemning yourself. Were there red flags you ignored? Were there boundaries you never established? Did you keep saying yes because you were afraid of disappointing people? Did you confuse being needed with being loved? Did you give access to people before they demonstrated character? Did you silence your instincts because you wanted the relationship to work? Did you keep rescuing people who never took responsibility for themselves? Did you repeatedly choose familiarity over health? These questions are not accusations. They are keys. Because if you refuse to examine your own patterns, you may leave one painful relationship only to recreate the same dynamic somewhere else. God does not only want to remove harmful people from your life. God wants to teach you why you kept making room for them. That is deeper freedom. You do not need to become suspicious of everyone. You need to become discerning. You do not need to stop loving. You need to learn how to love without abandoning wisdom. You do not need to become hard. You need to become anchored. A soft heart can have strong boundaries. A compassionate person can say no. A forgiving person can walk away. A generous person can stop being exploited. A peaceful person can confront what is wrong. Do not confuse gentleness with weakness. There is strength In refusing to become what hurt you, you were betrayed, but you do not have to become deceptive. You were lied to, but you do not have to become dishonest. You were mistreated, but you do not have to mistreat others. You were abandoned, but you do not have to abandon yourself. You were falsely accused, but you do not have to spend your entire life accusing everyone else. This is how you break cycles. Not by pretending they never happened, but by refusing to reproduce them. And maybe God is preparing you for something that requires a healthier version of you, a healthier relationship, a healthier environment, a healthier financial life, a healthier mind, a healthier understanding of yourself. But you cannot carry old survival patterns into a new season and expect a different result. At some point, you have to put down the identity that says, I am always the one who gets hurt. You may have been hurt repeatedly, but repetition is not destiny. You can change what you tolerate. You can change what you pursue. You can change what you believe. You can change how quickly you trust. You can change how you respond. You can change what you call love. You can change what you call opportunity. You can change what you call peace. And God can give you wisdom to recognize what you could not recognize before. Do not be ashamed that you once misunderstood something. Growth means your eyes can see what they could not see before. You are allowed to outgrow your old interpretation. You are allowed to say, I thought that was my blessing, but now I understand it was a lesson. You are allowed to say, I thought that person was my future, but now I see why God allowed separation. You are allowed to say, I thought the delay meant I was forgotten, but now I realize I was being prepared. You are allowed to change your mind when truth becomes clearer. That is not weakness, that is maturity. And now we come to something even deeper. You may be waiting for God to restore everything exactly as it was. But why? Why would you want the old version back? The old version contained the same weaknesses, the same blind spots, the same patterns, the same emotional dependencies, the same assumptions. Maybe restoration does not mean reconstruction. Maybe restoration means God gives you something healthier than what you originally asked to recover. You want the old relationship back. God may want to give you peace. You want the old opportunity back. God may want to give you a better direction. You want the old identity back. God may want you to become someone new. You want people to finally recognize you. God may want you to stop needing recognition. This is why you cannot dictate the shape of restoration. Let God restore what matters, not merely what you miss. Because sometimes we miss things that were hurting us. We miss people who were not good for us. We miss environments that kept us small. We miss versions of ourselves that had not yet learned how much more was possible. Nostalgia is not always guidance. Sometimes you are not longing for the person. You are longing for the feeling you had before the truth was revealed. And that feeling is gone because you know more now. You cannot unknow what you know. You cannot erase the evidence. You cannot return to innocence after wisdom has arrived. So stop begging to become who you were before the betrayal. Become wiser than you were before it. Become steadier. Become more discerning. Become more dependent on God and less dependent on people's approval. Become someone who can love deeply without losing identity. Become someone who can walk away without hatred. Become someone who can receive success without arrogance. Become someone who can experience rejection without collapse. Become someone who can experience abundance without forgetting gratitude. This is what the hidden season may have been producing. And there is another truth you need to hear. You are not required to explain your transformation to everyone. Some people will only understand your silence as arrogance because they benefited from your availability. Some people will call your boundaries selfish because they benefited from your lack of boundaries. Some people will say you changed because you stopped tolerating what they once received from you. Let them talk. You do not need to return to unhealthy behavior simply to prove that you are still a good person. You can be good and unavailable. You can be kind and firm. You can be forgiving and distant. You can be generous and selective. You can be peaceful and decisive. God does not require you to destroy yourself so that somebody else can remain comfortable. There is a time to explain. There is also a time to stop explaining. If someone has misunderstood you honestly, clarification may help. If someone has decided to misunderstand you deliberately, endless explanation becomes a trap. You cannot reason someone out of a story they are emotionally committed to believing. So let your life speak, let consistency speak, let character speak. Let time reveal what arguments cannot. Truth does not always need a microphone. Sometimes truth needs patience. And time has a way of exposing what people try to hide. Do not become obsessed with waiting for that exposure. That would still keep you emotionally tied to them. Your healing cannot depend on their downfall. You do not need to see them suffer in order to know that what they did was wrong. You do not need them to lose everything before you allow yourself to move forward. Justice belongs to God. Your assignment is different. Your assignment is to keep your heart alive. That is harder than revenge. Anybody can become bitter. It takes strength to remain humane after being dehumanized. Anybody can retaliate. It takes discipline to refuse to become what wounded you. Anybody can destroy. It takes courage to build again. Build your character, build your discipline, build your peace, build your future, build your relationship with God. Build your ability to think clearly, build your financial wisdom, build your health, build your confidence, build your capacity to say no, build your capacity to say yes. Build a life so rooted in purpose that old accusations no longer have enough power to shake it. And when you build, do not build to prove something. Build because you are alive. Build because God has not finished with you. Build because there are things inside you that never had room to grow while you were consumed with surviving. There is creativity in you that pain interrupted. There is courage in you that fear buried. There is discipline in you that chaos never allowed to develop. There are ideas you abandoned because you became too exhausted to imagine a future. Wake them up, not all at once. One step, one decision, one morning, one honest conversation. One boundary, one act of courage, one prayer, one disciplined choice. That is how a life changes. Not through emotional excitement alone, but through repeated alignment with what you know is right. And do not wait until you feel powerful. You may have to act while still trembling. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is refusing to let fear make the final decision. You may still remember what happened. You may still have moments when the old pain returns. Healing is not a straight line. A memory can appear without becoming your master. A painful day does not mean you are back where you started. Sometimes the wound speaks because it remembers. You can acknowledge it without obeying it. You can say, yes, that hurt me. Then you can say, but it will not control me. You can say, yes, I was betrayed. Then say, but I will not spend my future expecting betrayal. You can say, yes, they abandoned me. Then say, but I will not abandon myself. You can say, yes, I lost something. Then say, but I am still here. That last sentence matters. You are still here. There's more life ahead, more decisions, more mornings, more lessons, more possibilities, more work to do, more character to build, more peace to experience, more truth to discover. The chapter is not finished. Do not close the book because you disliked one page. God can bring meaning out of places you thought were meaningless. God can take the years you thought were wasted and turn them into wisdom that protects your future. God can use the very thing that broke your confidence to teach you where true confidence comes from. Not applause, not approval, not popularity, not possession, not status, not another person's affection. Your foundation must be deeper. People change, circumstances change, money changes, positions change, relationships change, bodies change, locations change. But your relationship with God can become the place where your identity remains anchored. And when that foundation becomes strong, you stop begging unstable things to give you permanent security. You stop asking people to carry a weight they were never designed to carry. You stop expecting relationships to heal every insecurity. You stop expecting success to erase every wound. You stop expecting money to create peace. You stop expecting recognition to prove worth. You begin to understand that external blessings cannot permanently repair an internal foundation that has been neglected. God wants to strengthen you from the inside out. That may be why some external things have been delayed, not because you are unworthy, because you are being prepared to carry what you have been asking for without losing yourself inside it. Do you know what happens when a person finally becomes secure? They stop chasing, they stop begging, they stop manipulating, they stop performing, they stop proving, they start choosing. They choose relationships based on character. They choose opportunities based on alignment. They choose environments based on peace. They choose commitments based on wisdom. They choose obedience even when nobody is watching. That is freedom. And perhaps you have been waiting for circumstances to give you permission to become free. You do not need permission. You can begin today. You can decide that the old accusation will not be your identity. You can decide that the betrayal will not determine your expectations. You can decide that rejection will not dictate your self-worth. You can decide that loneliness will not make you accept disrespect. You can decide that fear will not make your decisions. You can decide that your past will teach you without ruling you. And you can ask God for the strength to live that decision. Because decisions are powerful, but consistency gives them life. There will be days when you feel strong and days when you feel exhausted. Do not make permanent decisions based on temporary emotional storms. Do you know that not every color is innocent? Do you know that in this world, certain colors are not just cloth, not just fashion, but marks, spiritual marks that witches, sorcerers, and workers of darkness use to identify their victims? Listen carefully. The world is not neutral. The spiritual realm is real, and colors are not just shades of beauty. They can be used as signals, as codes, as doorways. And today, I am telling you this truth because too many of you walk around without knowing that the very thing you wear on your body can become an invitation to powers you do not see. This is not superstition, this is spiritual warfare. There are colors that witches deliberately use to mark out those who will be attacked, cursed, and manipulated. And if you are not discerning, if you are not connected to God, you can unknowingly carry that mark into your home, your workplace, your relationships, and your future. The truth is, the kingdom of darkness does not work in obvious ways. They work in subtlety. They don't come to you openly with horns and fire. They come through culture, through fashion, through what seems harmless. And they know that when you wear certain colors, you align yourself with a symbol in their world, and in the spirit, it is like hanging a signboard that says, "Target me, I am open." That is why you must be awake. That is why you must not be naive. God calls us to wisdom, not ignorance. God calls us to discernment, not blindness. And today, you must open your eyes. Witches do not waste time with random actions. Everything they do is intentional. They gather in the night, they chant, they mark, and they release powers into objects, fabrics, colors. They take what looks ordinary and give it spiritual assignments. And then, when the unsuspecting person wears it, that assignment begins to work. Suddenly, depression comes. Suddenly, confusion rises. Suddenly, relationships crumble. Suddenly, sickness appears. And the person does not understand that what they wore became a magnet in the spiritual world. And that is why you must never underestimate what you wear. That is why you must never dismiss what God reveals. Listen, God created colors, but witches pervert them. They know that colors carry energy, symbolism, and messages in the unseen realm. When God gave colors, they were meant to reflect beauty, light, and order. But witches twist them to create a counterfeit language. And there is one color they use again and again as a mark, as a spiritual weapon, as a silent curse upon those who do not know. When you wear this color carelessly, without prayer, without discernment, you allow yourself to become a billboard for their dark communication. They see you and say, "That one is already marked. That one is already under." And you walk around wondering why heaviness follows you, why doors close, why your spirit feels drained. It is because witches marked you by what you wore. Do not misunderstand, this is not about paranoia. This is about awareness. God does not want you to fear colors. God wants you to understand their power and to avoid the traps of darkness. Because while witches may use colors to curse, God uses wisdom to protect. And the wise do not walk blindly, the wise walk awake. The wise do not follow trends, the wise follow discernment. The wise do not dress to impress the world, the wise dress to honor God and to shield themselves in purity. Think about this. Why is it that in occult rituals, certain colors are mandatory? Why is it that in witchcraft gatherings, they cannot proceed without specific garments? Because they know the power of those colors. They know the vibration, the atmosphere, the message it sends in the invisible realm. They know that colors summon, attract, repel, or release forces. And if they know, should you not also know? If they understand, should you remain ignorant? God said, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge." Do not let ignorance destroy you. Let me tell you, witches love to use black not just because it is dark, but because in their rituals, black represents concealment, hidden power, death, and alignment with the void. When you wear it without prayer, you become hidden in the wrong atmosphere. You cloak yourself not just physically, but spiritually. And they mark you as one who can be manipulated. Some of you wonder why, after wearing certain colors, your mood shifts. Why do you feel a sudden burden? Why does heaviness sit on you? Because colors are not passive, they carry assignments. And there is another color, red. Do you think it is by accident that witches use red candles, red fabrics, red paint in their rituals? Red in their world represents blood, sacrifice, aggression, lust, and violence. When you wear it without discernment, they see you as someone already linked to their altar. That is why some women wear red and suddenly become objects of lustful attention. That is why some men wear red and suddenly attract hostility. The color marked them. And witches laugh because they know what you do not know. I tell you with conviction, the greatest weapon of witches is not what they chant, but what they hide in plain sight. They know that if they can make you think it is normal, you will never resist. They know that if they can make you believe it is only fashion, you will never question. And so they wrap darkness in beauty, and they call it style. They cover curses in trends, and they call it culture. And the people of God, who should be wise, walk right into the trap. But hear me, you are not called to walk like the blind. You are not called to wear what everyone wears. You are not called to follow what the world celebrates. You are called to be distinct, set apart, chosen. And God will not allow you to be ignorant if you are willing to listen. That is why you are hearing this today. It is a warning, a revelation, and an invitation to walk in spiritual authority. You must understand witches are not stronger than God. Their power is counterfeit. Their schemes temporary. Their curse is fragile. But their success depends on your ignorance. As long as you do not know, they can operate. As long as you do not discern, they can mark you. But the moment you know, the moment you discern, the moment you decide to honor God in what you wear, their power collapses. Because nothing in darkness can stand against the wisdom of God. So hear me. Don't just wear colors because they are beautiful. Ask God, is this aligned with your will? Is this safe in the spirit? Is this pure in your eyes? Seek God before you seek trends. Choose purity before you choose style. And if there is a color that witches use to mark people, avoid it. Refuse it. Do not let your body become a canvas for their dark language. Do not underestimate this. Witches track their victims by marks, and colors are marks. You may not see the mark, but in the spirit, it shines like a beacon. They know who to attack because of what you wear. But when you cover yourself in wisdom, when you clothe yourself with the awareness of God, then your mark becomes untouchable. Because no color can curse you when you are shielded by the truth of God. I say again, don't wear this color witches used to mark you. Don't wear it carelessly. Don't wear it ignorantly. Don't let the darkness celebrate because you have dressed yourself in its signal. Ask God to clothe you in light, to cover you in wisdom, to wrap you in discernment. And when you do, witches will see you, but they will flee. They will know you are not theirs to mark. They will know you are not theirs to curse. They will know you belong to God and God alone. Listen closely, because what I am about to say is not just for your ears, it is for your spirit. Colors are not neutral in the spiritual realm. They carry weight, they carry atmosphere, they carry intention. When you wear them, you are not only expressing outward beauty, you are communicating in the unseen. Witches know this far more than many believers do. They deliberately assign colors as symbols of their allegiance, as gateways of control, as signals in the darkness. And if you remain unaware, you risk stepping into a battlefield unarmed, dressed in the enemy's colors without even realizing it. But God, in His infinite mercy, reveals the schemes of the enemy so that His children will not walk in ignorance. There are seasons when God calls His people to awaken because the deception of the world grows more cunning. This is one of those seasons. Witches are not content with their hidden gatherings. They want to infiltrate everyday life. They want to bring their symbols into your wardrobe, their signals into your home, their curses into your choices. What they cannot take by force, they seek to trick you into carrying yourself. And what better way than through what seems harmless, a piece of clothing, a color, a trend. The unguarded mind laughs it off, but the discerning spirit recognizes that nothing in this world is without meaning. Understand this: when God created the heavens and the earth, He declared order in everything. Light was separated from darkness. Day was set apart from night. Colors were painted across creation, not only for beauty, but for distinction, for meaning, for order. But where God establishes order, the enemy seeks to establish confusion. Where God sets purity, witches twist it for corruption. That is why you cannot treat what you wear as meaningless. When you clothe yourself, you are either covering yourself in alignment with God's order, or you are unknowingly partnering with a system of confusion. Some of you feel constant heaviness, yet you never pause to ask, why does my spirit feel drained when I dress this way? You notice tension in your home, yet you ignore the fact that what you are wearing has been marked. You wonder why sudden arguments, sudden temptations, sudden sicknesses rise in your life after you adopt certain fashions, but you never trace it back to the spiritual coding attached to what you wear. God is revealing this so you will no longer be blind. You must see what is unseen. Witches know that colors can either attract or repel spiritual attention. They assign meaning to what they use. For them, black symbolizes the covering of secrecy, the cloak of hidden agendas. Red symbolizes blood and sacrifice, lust and rage. Green, in their rituals, is often tied to envy, manipulation, and counterfeit prosperity. Purple, which in God's order symbolizes royalty and authority, is twisted by witches to signify domination and counterfeit power. They do not use these shades by accident. Every piece of cloth in their rituals carries intention. So when you adopt their colors without discernment, you wear not just a garment, you wear a spiritual declaration you did not intend to make. But let me be clear, this is not about fear of colors. It is about wisdom with colors. God does not call you to live in paranoia. He calls you to live in discernment. What separates the faithful from the deceived is not fear, but awareness. The faithful know that God is above all, that no color can curse them if they stand under His protection. But they also know that walking with God means refusing to partner with darkness. You cannot walk in light while dressing yourself in the symbols of night. You cannot claim to seek purity while adorning yourself with the marks witches use for impurity. God is not mocked. He sees beyond appearances into intention. And when He warns you, it is because He loves you. So let me speak directly to your spirit. Stop wearing what aligns you with confusion. Stop adorning yourself with what witches use to signal destruction. If you are God's, then live like one who is God's. Do not let the enemy mark you through ignorance. When you wake up in the morning and clothe yourself, ask God for wisdom. Say, God, cover me not only with fabric, but with discernment. Let my clothing be a reflection of light, not a symbol of darkness. There is something deeper here. Witches cannot create. They only pervert what God has created. That means even the colors they try to claim are not theirs by origin. God made them. They belong to Him. But when people wear them without prayer, without purity, they align with the counterfeit use witches have imposed. The question is not whether a color itself is evil. The question is whether you wear it with discernment, whether you cover yourself with the authority of God, or whether you wear it blindly, allowing the enemy to attach his meaning to it. Hear me well, there is nothing wrong with beauty. There is nothing wrong with color. God painted the skies, the oceans, the flowers, the stones. He delights in variety. But when witches hijack symbols, God's people must not walk in ignorance. You must clothe yourself with understanding, because your garment can either be your shield or your trap. When you choose with God's wisdom, even the colors witches try to pervert cannot harm you. But when you choose without God, you wear their symbols as if you are part of their kingdom. The time has come for you to rise above ignorance. The time has come for you to stop dressing for the approval of the world and start dressing for alignment with God. The time has come for you to stop following trends that were designed in the halls of darkness. Do not think for a moment that fashion is innocent. Do not think that the patterns of this world are neutral. Many designs are birthed in rituals. Many trends are released after incantations. Many colors are chosen as signals for the spirit world. That is why when you wear them, you notice strange patterns follow you. But when you refuse them, when you clothe yourself with discernment, the power of those patterns is broken. I tell you today, witches cannot own you unless you agree with them. Their marks cannot remain unless you accept them. And one of the easiest ways you agree is by what you wear. But you are not called to live marked by them. You are called to live marked by God. And the mark of God is purity, wisdom, light, and discernment. No witch can erase that. No darkness can counterfeit that. But you must choose to live under that mark every day. So let me challenge you, examine your wardrobe. Look again at what you have normalized. Ask yourself, does this glorify God, or does it carry signals of the enemy? If you feel heaviness attached to it, if your spirit feels uneasy, that is God warning you. Remove it. Purge it. Do not keep garments that were designed in darkness. Do not cling to fabrics that were marked for curses. God is calling you higher, and you cannot walk higher while still clinging to the traps below. Witches may use colors to mark you, but God uses discernment to free you. Witches may use garments to curse, but God uses wisdom to protect. And today, God is opening your eyes. Do not waste this revelation. Do not treat this lightly. Colors are not just colors. Fabrics are not just fabrics. What you wear is either a weapon in the spirit or a weakness in the spirit. Choose carefully. Choose wisely. Choose with God. Let me take you even deeper into this truth. When you hear that witches use colors to mark people, you must understand it is not just about fabric. It is about identity. In the spiritual realm, identity is everything. The moment you wear what carries a dark assignment, you are silently agreeing with a false identity. You may not speak it, but in the invisible world it shouts. And the enemy, who is always looking for access, sees that false identity and seizes the opportunity. But you were never called to wear a false identity. You were called to carry the identity of one who belongs to God alone. Think of this carefully. When you put on your clothing, you are not simply covering your body, you are declaring something. You are presenting yourself to the world, yes, but more importantly, you are presenting yourself to the unseen. You are saying, this is who I am. This is what I carry. This is the mark upon me. And if your clothing carries the mark that witches use to identify their own, then you are walking into battles you did not choose, attacks you did not invite, and curses you did not seek. But they come anyway, because in the invisible realm, the mark you wear is louder than the words you speak. That is why God cares so deeply about how His people present themselves. Not because He is concerned with outward appearances alone, but because outward appearances are the reflections of inward alignments. What you wear shows what you agree with. What you wear reveals who you belong to. What you wear testifies in the spirit realm to whether you are covered by God's light or entangled in the symbols of darkness. Witches use colors because they know the spiritual law. What is seen can declare what is unseen. They wrap their intentions in garments. They hide their curses in design. They spread their assignments through fashion. And the world, hungry for beauty but blind to meaning, consumes it all. But you are not called to be blind. God did not create you to be a victim of hidden codes. He created you to walk in wisdom, in clarity, in discernment. He created you to know the truth and to live in freedom. So I say to you, when you step into your wardrobe, do not only ask, does this look good on me? Ask, does this align me with God? Do not only ask, is this trendy? Ask, is this holy? Do not only ask, will people like me in this? Ask, does this honor the God who covers me? Because every choice is either a partnership with light or an agreement with darkness. Now let us go even deeper. Colors in themselves are not evil. They are the creation of God. Black is not evil because it is black. Red is not evil because it is red. The evil comes when witches hijack what God has made and assign it for their purposes. That is the scheme of the enemy to counterfeit, to corrupt, to twist. But here lies your power. When you walk with God, you can redeem what the enemy tries to use. You can take back what was twisted and declare, this belongs to God, not to witches. But you cannot redeem what you are ignorant of. You cannot sanctify what you do not discern. Some of you must understand that there are fabrics and colors in your possession that were never prayed over, never surrendered to God. You just picked them because they were appealing. And now, every time you wear them, a heaviness follows you. That is not coincidence. That is spiritual reality. You need to go back, lay those garments before God, and say, if this does not glorify you, I release it. If this carries darkness, I renounce it. Do not be sentimental about things that carry curses. Do not cling to clothing that carries destruction. Better to lose a garment than to lose your peace. Better to part with fabric than to part with the covering of God. And let me tell you something else. Witches are strategic. They do not only use colors for marking, they use colors for recruitment. They know that if you consistently wear their symbols, you begin to unconsciously align with their realm. They know that repeated exposure creates agreement. So when you keep adorning yourself with their colors, over time, your spirit begins to tolerate what you should resist. You open yourself gradually until, without realizing it, you are already in bondage. But the Spirit of God comes today to break that cycle. The Spirit of God comes to call you out of the slow seduction of darkness and into the light of discernment. Do not take lightly what I am saying. There are people whose destinies were delayed, not because they were lazy, not because they were incapable, but because they carried marks they did not understand. They dressed themselves with curses, thinking they were only dressing in beauty. And the enemy gained legal ground to attack their marriages, their finances, their health, their minds. But you will not be one of them if you heed the warning of God today. Remember, your body is sacred. It is not just flesh, it is a vessel. It is a temple where the Spirit of God dwells. And when you clothe your body, you are clothing a temple. Would you dare dress the temple of God with marks of witches? Would you dare bring into His sanctuary garments coded for destruction? No. You must honor the vessel He has given you. You must cover it with purity, with discernment, with awareness that you carry something holy. Now let me give you another angle. Witches do not only use colors to attack individuals, they use them to control atmospheres. That is why entire events, entire spaces, entire communities can be influenced by the dominant colors chosen. They know that when a room is saturated with their signals, it creates an atmosphere where their spirits can operate freely. Have you ever walked into a place and immediately felt darkness, heaviness, or confusion? It may not only be the people, it may be the colors filling the environment, chosen and empowered for that very effect. But the one who walks with God can discern it. The one who walks with God can cut through the atmosphere and declare, this place belongs to God. No color, no signal of darkness has power here. That is the authority you must walk in. Not fear, not confusion, but boldness. Because God does not reveal this to you so that you tremble. He reveals it so that you rise. He reveals it so that you cleanse your life, guard your spirit, and walk in wisdom. He reveals it so that you may not be marked by witches, but marked by Him. And here is the truth that must burn in your heart. No matter what color witches try to use, the covering of God is greater. No mark they assign can overpower the mark of God upon your life. No garment they pervert can stand against a garment you consecrate in prayer. No assignment of darkness can remain where the light of God shines. The key is not fear. The key is alignment. The moment you align your life with God, you are shielded. The moment you cover yourself with His wisdom, their marks fall powerless. So I urge you, do not be careless. Do not be blind. Do not dress your body without thought, without prayer, without discernment. When you rise in the morning, clothe yourself not only with fabric, but with wisdom. When you prepare for the day, ask not only how you appear to men, but how you appear to the unseen. And if you walk in the awareness that you belong to God, then no witch can ever own you, no color can ever curse you, and no darkness can ever mark you. My beloved, listen with the ears of your soul. There is nothing in this world that the enemy does without a counterfeit, and there is nothing he crafts without a hidden meaning. When witches, sorcerers, and agents of darkness mark their prey, they do not always use open rituals or loud proclamations. They use symbols, they use colors, they use things that seem harmless to the ordinary eye, but carry deep spiritual assignments in the unseen realm. And that is why I tell you today, do not underestimate what you wear. Do not underestimate the colors that surround your life, for they can carry the very essence of bondage or freedom. The world will say, it's just a color, it's just fashion, it's just style. But you who belong to God know better. For when God created light, He divided the day and the night. He created the rainbow as a covenant sign. He painted the earth with meaning. Nothing in creation is random. Colors themselves speak. They declare. They mark. They testify. So when the agents of darkness corrupt what God has created, they attach spiritual weight to those very colors. And if you are careless, if you adorn yourself with the wrong shade, you may be unknowingly agreeing with forces that hate your soul. Witches understand what many children of God neglect. That appearance is not neutral. That garments carry a message. That what is worn becomes a banner in the spirit. They select colors that carry vibrations of death, rebellion, or lust, and they use them as snares. When you step into their chosen attire, when you wrap yourself in their chosen shade, you step under a banner that is not God's. Without even speaking, you declare, I align with this force. And the spirits assigned to that color recognize you. They mark you. They follow you. But God has not left you blind. He has not left you defenseless. For He declares that His people are a chosen generation, a holy nation, a people set apart. That means you cannot dress like the world. You cannot adopt the banners of darkness. You cannot make peace with what has been twisted to wage war against your destiny. What you wear should testify of purity, of light, of holiness, of alignment with God's kingdom. Every thread, every shade, every garment must declare that you belong to Him alone. The enemy thrives in secrecy. He thrives in ignorance. He thrives when the people of God say, it doesn't matter. But I am here to break that deception. it does matter. For your clothing is not just fabric, it is a covering. And a covering is spiritual. From the beginning, when Adam and Eve sinned, God Himself provided covering. Do you see the weight of that? Clothing is not simply to shield the body from weather. It is a declaration of whose protection you stand under. If witches have claimed the color to summon darkness, then wearing it with ignorance is like walking into a battlefield waving the enemy's flag. My beloved, you must rise with wisdom. You must test everything. If a color has been taken and twisted by darkness, refuse to glorify it, refuse to normalize it. Do not say, everyone wears it, so why not me? You are not everyone, you are God's. Your identity is not defined by trends, not by culture, not by designers, not by the witchcraft of this age. Your identity is sealed by God's Spirit, and your life must reflect His holiness. When witches mark people, they do not always need to speak curses. They allow the ignorant to wear the mark themselves. They allow you to open the door without knowing it. That is why discernment is critical. That is why you must pray even over your wardrobe. You must ask God, what aligns with your light? What pleases you? What honors you? Let your closet become an altar where only what reflects holiness remains. And hear me clearly, the danger is not in fabric itself, for God created all things pure. The danger is in the meaning assigned by darkness. Once a symbol or color has been consecrated for evil, it becomes a channel. And if you are careless, it can become a portal. Do not let vanity lead you into spiritual slavery. Better to be mocked for simplicity than to be celebrated by the world while being marked in the spirit for destruction. I urge you, live with conviction, not compromise. Do not wear what witches use to mark their prey. Do not adopt the banners of rebellion disguised as beauty. Do not walk wrapped in colors that declare allegiance to forces you cannot see. Instead, clothe yourself in what reflects the purity, peace, and glory of God. Let your garments testify of the one you serve. Let your presence shine so clearly that no power of darkness can mistake who you belong to. For God is not only the God of the heavens, He is also the God who sanctifies every detail of your life. And if you let Him, He will sanctify even your wardrobe, even your appearance, even your colors, until everything about you screams, this one belongs to God. Beloved, hear this final word as fire upon your soil. Your life is too precious to be marked by darkness. Your destiny too sacred to be claimed by forces that hate the light. You are not a vessel for confusion. You are not a canvas for the enemy's colors. You are a living testimony that God reigns. When you step out into this world, every step you take declares a message. Either you carry the fragrance of holiness, or you carry the stench of compromise. Either you shine as a lamp for God, or you blend into the banners of rebellion. The choice rests in your heart, and today, I plead with you, choose God. Do not be casual with what is sacred. Do not be careless with what marks you. Every thread on your body, every shade that wraps your frame can either proclaim bondage or freedom. Let it be known in the heavens and on the earth that you are a child who belongs fully to God, set apart, unashamed, and unwilling to wear what has been claimed by evil. Tear down every compromise. Lay aside every garment that whispers rebellion. Walk boldly under the covering of God, for His light is your shield. His truth is your identity. His holiness is your beauty. And I challenge you, do not only change your clothing, but change your posture before God. Strip your heart of hidden vanity. Strip your soul of silent pride. Stand unclothed before God in humility, and let Him clothe you with His glory. Let the world see that your adornment is not in colors that witches claim, but in the radiance of a life surrendered to God's power. When you walk into a room, let it be impossible for darkness to remain. When you speak, let your voice carry the authority of one fully aligned with God's holiness. When you live, let every breath declare, I belong to God, and nothing of darkness has a claim on me. That is your calling. That is your banner. That is your destiny. So rise now with courage. Walk away from compromise. Break the chains of ignorance and step forth as one who shines, not because of earthly fabric, but because the eternal light of God rests upon you. For when you choose His covering, when you live as His vessel, no witch, no sorcerer, no color, no curse will ever mark you. You are sealed, secured, and sanctified by God alone. Now I ask you, what will your life declare when the world looks at you? Will they see compromise? Or will they see the glory of God? The answer begins today, in your choice, in your conviction, in your courage. Stand firm, stand holy, and let your life forever testify that you are marked only by the power of God. Do you know what the enemy is using in this generation to blind the eyes of millions? It is not always war. It is not always poverty. It is not always sickness. It is something so subtle, so sweet to the ears, yet poisonous to the soul. It is a melody. A melody that sounds harmless, a melody that feels innocent, a melody wrapped in beauty, but hiding corruption. It is music that carries the fingerprints of Satan, and millions of Christians are deceived by it. They think it is just entertainment. They think it is just rhythm and sound. But behind that rhythm is a spiritual power, a melody that shapes your mind, dulls your spirit, and separates you from the voice of God. You see, music was never neutral. Music is a force. It was created by God to lift the soul toward Him, to awaken the heart to worship, to align our spirit with His presence. But what God creates for good, Satan twists for destruction. If you doubt this, just look around. Notice how entire cultures are shaped by songs. Notice how movements rise on the back of rhythms. Notice how even your own mood, your own thoughts, your own desires can change within minutes of listening to a single melody. This is not coincidence. Music carries spirit. And in this generation, Satan has dressed his poison in rhythm, and millions are dancing to it without realizing they are dancing away from God. When you let this melody into your life, you are not just listening with your ears, you are opening a door into your spirit. Do you not understand? Sound penetrates deeper than words. A lyric can bypass your reasoning and sink straight into your subconscious. A beat can stir desires in you that were sleeping, awaken, lust that was buried, trigger anger that was controlled, or dull your hunger for the things of God. This is why the enemy loves music, because it carries influence without resistance. People defend it, excuse it, justify it, and yet it is the very chain keeping them bound. And here lies the great deception. Millions of Christians think they can consume this melody without consequence. They say, it's only a song. It's only music. It doesn't affect me. But I tell you the truth. What you consume consumes you. What you feed on, you become. You cannot pour filth into your ears and expect purity in your soul. You cannot feed on violence, lust, greed, and rebellion through melodies, and then wonder why your heart feels heavy and your spirit feels distant from God. Do you not see? The enemy is programming you without your permission, shaping your desires, shifting your values, and slowly desensitizing your spirit until sin no longer looks dangerous, but normal. God gave you 24 hours each day. Hours meant to be filled with His Word, with prayer, with building your destiny, with serving others, with glorifying His name. Yet how many hours are wasted on melodies that glorify everything God despises? Songs that exalt rebellion, songs that worship lust, songs that praise greed, songs that glorify darkness. And you think you can drink this poison daily and still remain spiritually alive? My friend, you are deceiving yourself. The melody of Satan is not entertainment. It is warfare. It is his most powerful weapon to seduce your soul while you smile and sing along. Look closely at what the world calls music today. Notice how the lyrics are filled with rebellion against authority, rebellion against purity, rebellion against God. Notice how the beats are designed not to uplift your spirit, but to seduce your flesh. Notice how the culture surrounding this music promotes immorality, addiction, violence, vanity, and emptiness. Do you think this is an accident? No, this is design. This is a carefully crafted strategy by Satan himself to turn the hearts of men and women away from God. And the tragedy is that millions of Christians, men and women who claim to love God, are filling their minds, their cars, their homes, and their children's ears with the very poison that will destroy them. Let me tell you something you must never forget. Whatever you allow to enter your ears will eventually shape your soul. That is why God wants us to guard our hearts diligently, for out of them flow the issues of life. If your ears are gates, then music is the army that marches through those gates daily. If the melody you feed on glorifies darkness, do not be surprised when darkness begins to grow in you. If the songs you play exalt lust, do not be shocked when lust begins to burn uncontrollably inside you. If the rhythms you love exalt violence, do not wonder why peace escapes you. And if the voices you follow glorify pride, vanity, and rebellion, do not be surprised when humility and obedience to God feel impossible. The melody of Satan is not always obvious. Sometimes it is bold, filled with explicit rebellion and sin. But often it is subtle, hidden in charm, wrapped in beauty, disguised as art. It comes in gentle lyrics that seem harmless, but slowly shift your loyalty away from God. It comes in beats that seem catchy, but slowly numb your hunger for prayer. It comes in entertainment that seems innocent, but slowly makes sin appear normal. That is the danger of this melody. It does not shout, it whispers. And millions of Christians are lulled to sleep by its whispers, unaware that their spirit is dying while their lips are singing. But I ask you, who will you allow to shape your soul? God or Satan, whose melody will fill your heart? For there are only two kinds of music in this world. The kind that lifts you closer to God, and the kind that pulls you deeper into darkness. There is no neutral ground. Every song you play, every beat you dance to, every lyric you repeat is either sharpening your spirit or dulling it. It is either opening your heart to God or hardening it against Him. You cannot serve two masters. You cannot sing the songs of rebellion and claim the heart of purity. You cannot drink from the cup of God and the cup of Satan and expect your spirit to remain alive. That is why I cry out with urgency, guard your ears, guard your heart, guard your soul. Do not fall into the trap that millions have fallen into. Do not laugh and call it harmless when God calls it dangerous. Do not excuse what God condemns. You must be bold enough to cut off what is poisoning you, even if the world calls it art, even if your friends call it fun, even if your flesh craves it. Because your destiny is greater than a song. Your calling is higher than a beat. Your soul is worth more than a moment of entertainment. And let me tell you this truth with fire in my heart. The melody you follow today will decide the path of your tomorrow. If you let the melodies of Satan rule your ears, your future will be filled with compromise, confusion, and spiritual death. But if you discipline yourself to fill your ears with the sounds that honor God, if you fill your home with words of life, if you train your heart to sing what uplifts your spirit, then you will find strength, clarity, peace, and power. Because God blesses those who refuse to be deceived. So do not underestimate this. Do not laugh it off. Do not be casual about it. The melody of Satan is not just sound, it is a weapon. And millions of Christians are being slaughtered by it, not because it looks dangerous, but because it looks harmless. And this is the greatest deception of ours, that something that feels so good could be so deadly. Do you realize that one of the greatest tragedies of our time is not that Christians are under attack, but that they are willingly lowering their guard, opening their doors, and inviting the enemy into their hearts through the very melodies they consume. The enemy no longer needs to knock at the front gate, for millions have already handed him the keys through their playlists. They worship God with their lips on Sunday, but throughout the week, their minds and hearts are saturated with rhythms that glorify sin. And they wonder why their prayers feel dry, why their faith feels weak, and why their passion for God seems to fade. It is because the fire of God cannot burn in a soul filled with the smoke of corruption. The melody of Satan is not just noise, it is a sermon. Do you understand this? Every song is a sermon preached to your subconscious, repeated over and over until it becomes your belief, your culture, your lifestyle. While the preacher of God speaks once or twice a week, the preacher of Satan sings into your ears for hours every single day. Which voice do you think will have the greater influence? Which voice do you think will shape your desires, your thoughts, your identity? This is why the enemy pours his energy into melodies, because he knows what many of God's people have forgotten. Repetition is power. What you repeat becomes who you are. And look at how clever he is. He packages rebellion in rhythms so sweet that even the righteous begin to hum along. He wraps corruption in poetry so eloquent that even the pure begin to admire it. He clothes lust in beauty so deceptive that even the strong begin to justify it. And without realizing it, the child of God, who once lived in purity and holiness, begins to compromise little by little until their very soul is aligned with darkness, while their lips still claim to follow God. But you must awaken. You must open your eyes. Do not think that because the melody makes you smile, it is safe. Poison does not stop being poison because it tastes sweet. A trap does not stop being a trap because it looks beautiful. And Satan does not stop being Satan because he comes with a guitar instead of a serpent. His goal has not changed since the beginning: to separate man from God, to lead the soul away from light and into darkness, to drown the voice of truth in the noise of deception. And today, his weapon is melody. Ask yourself this: why is it that the songs of this world spread faster than the word of God? Why is it that entire generations can memorize every lyric of corruption, but cannot remember the words of prayer? Why is it that children can dance to every beat of rebellion, but struggle to kneel before God? Because the enemy has mastered the art of seduction. He knows that if he can control the melody, he can control the mind. If he can control the rhythm, he can control the heart. And if he can control the heart, he can lead the soul away from God. Beloved, you must understand that God created you for greatness, for holiness, for a destiny beyond the shallow pleasures of this world. Your spirit was designed to resonate with His voice. Your heart was designed to respond to His truth. Your soul was designed to hunger for His presence. But when you fill yourself with melodies that glorify sin, you are tuning your soul to a frequency that is not of God. You are aligning yourself with the enemy's voice. And soon, the things of God will no longer move you. Prayer will feel boring. Worship will feel heavy. Righteousness will feel restrictive. Not because God has lost His power, but because your heart has been dulled by melodies that glorify everything He despises. Do not deceive yourself by thinking you can separate the rhythm from the spirit. Every melody carries a spirit. There is no neutral ground. Music is a vehicle, and every song carries you somewhere, either toward God or away from Him. Ask yourself, where are the songs you love carrying you? Are they lifting you toward purity, discipline, humility, and the fear of God? Or are they dragging you toward pride, lust, rebellion, and spiritual emptiness? The answer is clear, and it is time to stop pretending otherwise. This is why I tell you with urgency, do not be casual about what you allow into your ears. If you value your soul, you must value your gates. Just as you would not allow poison into your food, do not allow corruption into your hearing. Just as you would not open your door to a thief, do not open your ears to melodies that rob you of holiness. For once the melody enters, it does not leave easily. It lingers, it repeats, it plants seeds. And those seeds grow into habits, and those habits grow into chains. And this is why so many are bound. They pray but feel no breakthrough. They worship but feel no fire. They desire God but cannot escape temptation, because the chains around them are forged not by visible sin, but by invisible melodies. And until those chains are broken, they will never walk in the full power God has destined for them. My friend, God has given you the authority to decide which voice you will allow to shape you. You are not a slave to culture. You are not a puppet of the industry. You are not a victim of the enemy's melody unless you choose to be. You can cut it off. You can silence it. You can cleanse your ears and fill your heart with what uplifts your spirit. You can take back your soul from the deception that millions have fallen into. But here is the question, will you? Will you dare to be different? Will you dare to turn off what the world celebrates and fill your life with what God blesses? Will you have the courage to reject what entertains your flesh but destroys your spirit? Will you be among the few who rise above the crowd and live in the purity God requires? Or will you continue to dance to the melody of Satan, smiling outwardly while dying inwardly? This is the hour of decision. You cannot remain neutral any longer. Every song you play, every melody you consume is either aligning you with God or with the enemy. And the destiny of your soul depends on which voice you choose to follow. Let us go deeper with the fire of truth burning brighter. Because this is not a light matter. This is the war for the soul, and we cannot treat it with soft words. Look around you and see how deeply this melody has invaded the sacred spaces of life. Families that once gathered to pray now gather around screens, blaring rhythms that celebrate lust, greed, and pride. Children who once sang songs of innocence now repeat lyrics that glorify rebellion. Entire households that were meant to echo with the voice of God now vibrate with sounds that glorify sin. And the people ask, why does my home feel heavy? Why does my spirit feel restless? Why do I feel far from God? My friend, the answer is simple. You have invited another spirit into your home through the songs you allow. Music is not entertainment alone. It is a spiritual transaction. Every note, every beat, every lyric either builds an altar for God or builds an altar for the enemy. That is why the enemy does not fight you only with weapons of violence. He fights you with songs because he knows that when the melody changes, the atmosphere changes. And when the atmosphere changes, the heart begins to shift. If the song you play creates an atmosphere where sin feels comfortable, then you have welcomed a guest who will not leave easily. And let me say this with clarity, even worship is not safe when it is corrupted by the same melody. Do not be deceived by the label, Christian or spiritual, slapped onto a song. If its spirit is borrowed from the world, if its rhythm imitates the same beats that glorify sin, then it carries confusion. This is why so many feel stirred emotionally in worship, but walk away unchanged spiritually. They confuse excitement with holiness, noise with anointing, rhythm with presence. God does not dwell in what entertains the flesh. He dwells where the heart is bowed in reverence, purity, and truth. You must understand that Satan is not afraid of you singing about God if your heart is already enslaved to his melody. He does not tremble. He does not tremble because you utter holy words with your lips while your soul is still tuned to his rhythm. He knows that a divided heart cannot stand. That is why the greatest deception is not in the obvious rebellion, but in the subtle compromise when songs that should glorify God are infused with the very spirit that glorifies the enemy. Beloved, do not play with fire. If the melody you sing does not lead you to holiness, to obedience, to the fear of God, then it is not drawing you closer to Him. It is pulling you away. And if it pulls you away, it is dangerous, no matter how sweet it sounds, no matter how beautiful the voice, no matter how inspiring the rhythm, for the measure of a song is not how it makes your flesh feel, but what it does to your spirit before God. Now I must speak to the parents, for this is urgent. What are you allowing into the ears of your children? Do not be deceived into thinking they are too young to understand. The enemy does not need their understanding. He only needs their repetition. A child does not need to grasp the full meaning of lyrics to be shaped by them. What they repeat becomes their culture. What they hum becomes their comfort. And soon the very things you prayed they would avoid are planted deep in their hearts. Parents, do not cry later about rebellion. If today you are allowing rebellion to enter through their headphones, do not plead with God to save their purity if you have already surrendered their gates to the enemy. Guard their ears, guard their hearts, and fill your home with the kind of melody that aligns them with God's presence. And let me say this, what you tolerate will one day dominate. If you tolerate ungodly music in your personal life, it will dominate your thoughts. If you tolerate it in your home, it will dominate your children. If you tolerate it in your worship, it will dominate your faith community. That is why God calls for separation, for holiness, for courage to say no when the world shouts yes. For you cannot conquer what you are still entertaining. But here is the hope. If music has the power to enslave, then it also has the power to set free. If melodies can chain the soul, then melodies filled with the Spirit of God can break those chains. When you turn your ears from the noise of corruption and fill your life with songs of truth, you are not just changing your playlist. You are changing your atmosphere, your mind, your desires, your destiny. For when the voice of God becomes the melody of your soul, sin loses its grip, temptation loses its sweetness, and your heart burns again with purity and fire. Therefore, I call you to take a stand. Do not walk out of this moment thinking this is just about music. This is about allegiance. Whose voice will you follow? Whose rhythm will you allow to guide your steps? Whose song will you let shape your heart? God does not ask for half of your devotion. He asks for all. And if you will silence the melody of the enemy and lift your soul to the melody of God, you will rise above the deception that has enslaved millions. You will walk in freedom, in purity, in power. And you will stand before God unashamed, knowing you did not bow to the noise of this world. Then let the fire rise higher. Let these words cut deeper. For truth must pierce through the fog of deception until hearts are awakened to the reality of what is at stake. Do not think lightly of the power of sound. From the very beginning, God designed creation with sound as its foundation. He spoke, and the heavens and earth came into being. He uttered, and light broke through darkness. The universe itself was born from His voice. If sound carries such power in the hands of God, do you think Satan would not try to counterfeit it? He understands that what enters the ear shapes the heart, and what shapes the heart directs the soul. This is why he has filled the earth with melodies that do not honor God, but exalt man, glorify sin, and celebrate rebellion. He is not after your entertainment. He is after your eternity. And yet, millions walk into his snare blind, saying, it's just music, it's just fun, it's not that serious. But do you not see that this is exactly how deception works? The enemy cloaks danger in innocence, dresses poison in sweetness, and hides chains inside of what feels harmless. The melody is his bait, and the soul is his prize. And while you dance, while you sing, while you laugh, he is binding your spirit, dulling your sensitivity to God, and slowly draining your passion for truth. Consider this. Why do you think it is so hard for some to focus in prayer, but so easy to memorize entire albums of songs that glorify sin? Why do you think it is a battle to sit with the Word of God for 15 minutes, but effortless to listen to worldly music for hours without boredom? It is because one voice feeds the spirit and the other feeds the flesh. And whichever one you feed, the most becomes the master of your life. You cannot give more time, more devotion, and more repetition to the songs of darkness and still expect to burn with the fire of God. It is impossible. And here lies the tragedy. Many are trying to live a double life. They lift their hands to God while their ears are still tuned to the melody of the enemy. They want the blessing of heaven while still dancing to the rhythms of hell. But God will not compete with another voice. He is a jealous God, demanding your whole heart, not a portion of it. He will not pour his anointing into a vessel filled with compromise. And so, many remain dry, stagnant, frustrated in their walk. Not because God is unwilling to bless, but because they have allowed another melody to occupy the place that belongs only to Him. This is why the call is urgent. You cannot afford to be casual in this battle. Your ears are gates. Your heart is soil. Your soul is eternal. And what you allow in will determine what grows within you. If you want purity, fill yourself with what is pure. If you want holiness, fill yourself with what is holy. If you want the presence of God, fill your atmosphere with sounds that draw Him near. For the melody you choose today will echo in your destiny tomorrow. Think also of the generations to come. The melody you embrace is the melody your children will inherit. If you saturate your home with rhythms that glorify sin, you are not just entertaining yourself. You are laying a foundation of compromise for those who come after you. The enemy does not just seek to capture individuals. He seeks to capture bloodlines. He knows that if he can weave his melody into your family, it will echo for generations. But the opposite is also true if you fill your home with the sound of God's truth. If you create an atmosphere where His presence is welcomed, you are building a legacy of faith that will outlive you. So the question stands before you: what legacy will your melody leave? Will it leave echoes of rebellion or songs of righteousness? Will it leave chains of compromise or a heritage of holiness? Will it leave confusion in the hearts of your children or clarity in their pursuit of God? Do not wait until it is too late to answer this question. Decide now which voice you will allow to define your home, your heart, and your destiny. And let me remind you, The melody of God is not always loud or glamorous by the world's standards. It may not attract the masses. It may not trend on the platforms of this age, but it carries life. It carries peace. It carries strength. It carries the presence of God that no worldly sound can imitate. When you choose His melody, you choose alignment with His power. And when His power fills you, no deception can enslave you, no distraction can consume you, and no temptation can destroy you. Therefore, I urge you with all the weight of my spirit, cleanse your ears, cleanse your atmosphere, cleanse your heart. Cut off the melodies that chain you to sin and fill your life with the sound of truth. Do not hesitate, do not compromise, do not delay. Every moment you delay, another chain is forged. But every moment you act, another chain is broken. This is not about music alone. It is about devotion. It is about allegiance. It is about the eternal question, will you belong wholly to God? Or will you let the enemy write the soundtrack of your life? My beloved, this is the moment of truth. You cannot walk away from these words unchanged. For the melody you choose to live by will either draw you closer to God or cast you further into the grip of the enemy. This is not about taste. This is not about preference. This is not about culture. It is about eternity. The sound you allow to shape your heart will shape your destiny. And when you stand before God, you will not be able to say, it was just music. No, you will have to answer for every voice you entertained, for every rhythm you allowed into your spirit, for every song you exalted above His presence. The time has come to make a decision. Will you continue to sing along with the world while your soul drifts further from God? Or will you rise with courage and silence every melody that does not honor Him? Will you keep feeding the flesh while starving your spirit? Or will you cleanse your ears, your home, your atmosphere, and fill it with the sound of holiness, purity, and truth? Will you compromise with the noise of this age? Or will you stand boldly as one who belongs to God alone? This is not a small choice. It is the choice of your life. For when you cut off the voice of the enemy, you make space for the voice of God. When you silence the melody of deception, you will begin to hear the whispers of His guidance, the rhythm of His peace, the song of His strength. And when His melody becomes your melody, no power of darkness can enslave you. You will walk in freedom, you will live in purity, and you will shine as a light in a generation that has been drowned in noise. So I challenge you today, dare to be different. Dare to silence what the world celebrates. Dare to reject what your flesh craves. Dare to live as one who values the voice of God above every other sound. Tear down the altars of false melodies in your life and build an altar where only His presence is welcome. Guard your ears like treasure. Guard your heart like a fortress. And guard your soul like a crown that must not be stolen. And when the day comes when you stand before God, may you stand unashamed, with a life that testifies, I did not bow to the melody of the enemy. I kept my song pure. I kept my devotion whole. I chose the voice of God above all. That, my friend, is the victory worth living for. That is the destiny worth fighting for. That is the legacy worth leaving behind. So choose today while you still have breath. Choose your melody, for in that choice, You choose your eternity.